You know, for over 40 years, one psychiatrist risked his entire reputation to investigate one of life's greatest mysteries, reincarnation. But he didn't use philosophy or faith, he used forensics. So today, we're going to follow his trail of evidence.
So, let's start with the question that's really at the heart of all this. Just imagine a toddler suddenly describing people they've never met, places they've never been, and with this chilling accuracy. So are these just, vivid imaginations? Or could it be something else entirely?
All right, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to follow the exact path he took. First up, we'll meet the scientists behind this unlikely quest. Then, we'll break down his forensic method, before digging into the actual case files. From there, we'll see the startling patterns that started to emerge. And finally, we'll ask what his legacy really means.
So first things first, who was this guy? Who was the man willing to dive into something so controversial? Let's meet our investigator.
Okay, and I really want to be clear about this. Dr. Ian Stevenson wasn't some fringe theorist working out of his garage. This guy was the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Virginia. A big deal. So when he decided to scientifically investigate children's claims of past lives, he was putting his entire, hard-won career on the line.
See, Stevenson knew right away that he couldn't just sit in an office and philosophize about this. No way. He pioneered what he called shoe leather research. What does that mean? It means for over 40 years, he was out there, traveling the globe, going to these tiny remote villages to get the evidence himself, right from the source. And he kept at it right up until he passed away in 2007.
And the sheer scale of his work, it's just staggering. I mean, we're not talking about a handful of interesting stories here. He meticulously documented and investigated over 3,000 individual cases of children who claimed they remembered a past life. 3,000!
Okay, so you're probably thinking, how on earth do you even begin to scientifically study something like this? Something so unbelievable. Well, that's where Stevenson's genius really kicks in. It was all about his method.
What made Stevenson's approach so brilliant was that he totally changed his perspective. He knew you couldn't just bring a kid into a lab and say, okay, remember your past life now. It doesn't work that way. So he stopped trying. Instead, he started treating every single case like a detective would treat a crime scene. His job wasn't to create the memory, but to investigate the evidence it left behind.
Okay, so let's walk through his process step by step. First up, he would conduct these exhaustive interviews, sometimes with multiple translators, just to make sure nothing got missed. Then, and this is key, he would take every single specific claim, a name, a place, a family secret, and try to verify it. Now, the really crucial part was step 3, ruling out any possible way the child could have learned this stuff normally. And finally, by focusing on really young kids, between 2 and 5, he minimized the chance they were just repeating stories they'd heard.
So the method sounds pretty solid, right? Super rigorous. But the real test, of course, is what did it actually find? Let's get into the good stuff and look at some of the actual case files to see what kind of evidence he was dealing with.
All right, so let's start with this one case. It's about a 5-year-old boy from Lebanon named Ahmad Elawar. Now, Ahmad started talking, and not just talking in incredible detail about a life he said he'd lived in a village he'd never even been to, about 25 miles from his home.
And look, these were not vague, dreamy claims like, I was a king or something. No, he gave a specific name, Ibrahim Buhamzi. He talked about a mistress named Jamile. He described the man's house, his friends, even family arguments. He basically laid out this guy's entire life story.
And here is the kicker. Stevenson documented 57 specific, checkable claims that Ahmad made before anyone from his family had ever met the other family. So once they finally investigated, how many were right? A staggering 51 out of 57 turned out to be completely 100% accurate to the life of this dead man Ibrahim Buhamzi. Just wow.
Okay, so specific memories are one thing. That's already pretty mind-blowing. But then, Stevenson stumbled onto a totally different kind of evidence, something physical, something he felt was way more powerful. Evidence that seemed to be literally written on the children's bodies.
Let's take the case of Maharam, a boy in India. He claimed he'd been killed by a shotgun in his past life, and he was born with this strange pattern of small, circular birthmarks all over his chest. Incredibly, Stevenson managed to track down the autopsy report for the man Maharam said he used to be. And guess what it said? It confirmed a fatal shotgun wound to the chest, in the exact same location and pattern as the boy's birthmarks. A direct physical match. So these individual cases are absolutely stunning, right? But Stevenson was a scientist. His real contribution wasn't just collecting stories. It was analyzing all 3,000 cases together to see if any patterns started to pop up.
And what he found was remarkable. Across thousands of cases from totally different cultures all over the world, he found this incredible consistency. The memories would almost always pop up right when a kid starts talking, around age 2 or 3, and then they'd fade away by the time they start school. Those birthmarks matching fatal wounds? That was a super common feature. And maybe the most striking of all, the previous life had usually ended violently.
And, I mean, just look at this statistic. It's jaw-dropping. In over 70% of the thousands of cases he studied, the life they remembered ended violently. That's not just a small trend. That was the dominant feature of this whole phenomenon.
And this wasn't just data on a page, you know? It had real-world consequences for these kids. They often seemed to carry the trauma with them, showing these really intense, specific phobias. So a child who remembered drowning would have this paralyzing fear of water. A kid who remembered being hit by a car would be terrified of vehicles. And they had no reason for it, no trauma in this life to explain it.
Okay, so after 40 years of research and 3,000 cases, what was the final verdict? What did the man at the center of all this actually conclude?
And this is a really crucial point. Stevenson was a scientist to the very end. He never, not once, claimed that he had proved reincarnation. He was super cautious. His final conclusion was that reincarnation was the most tenable hypothesis. What does that mean? It means it was simply the best, the simplest, and the most complete explanation that fit all the weird, incredible facts he had gathered.
Now, while a lot of mainstream scientists just kind of ignored his work, he wasn't totally dismissed. And this quote from a review in the super prestigious Journal of the American Medical Association, it's really telling. They didn't come out and say reincarnation is real, but they couldn't deny the quality of his work. They admitted the evidence was, and I'm quoting here, difficult to explain on any other grounds. Which, of course, leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Was Stevenson's 40-year-long hunt a real glimpse into life after death? Or does his data point to a mystery about human consciousness that's even stranger and more complex than we can possibly imagine? He gave us the evidence. The explanation, well, that's still out there, waiting to be discovered.